On number 7, if you were to read through it, you'll realize that it has a couple things that you need to calculate, and I'm going to show you the shortcut on the calculator for calculating those things. One of them, of course, is the mean, and you probably already know how to calculate that. And you can add them together and divide by the number of things you have. But the other one is the standard deviation. And standard deviation is a way of measuring the spread of the data to know how far apart the data are. Data is plural, by the way, so that's why I say data are, not data is. But it kind of helps us know how far apart the data are and like the way the whole thing is distributed. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to type that in as L1 and we're going to type that in as L2. And before we get too crazy with it, there's a habit that we have sometimes when we do L1 and L2. We have a tendency that we want to just turn the scatter plot on and graph it. And that's not going to be the case this time. So let's pretend like you didn't see that right there at my list. We're just going to go through it step by step. Get that smudge off the screen and we'll start. Here we press Stat and we press Enter on Edit. Now this is where my screen was a second ago, but we have a problem here because there's some data in, so we're going to go up and clear it out and hit Enter. Let me go up and clear and hit Enter. Let me point out something here. Let me just sidetrack for just a second and tell you an easy mistake to make. A lot of people will go up and they'll press Delete, and when they do that, L1 is gone and then they're going to have to retrieve it, and it gets kind of crazy. So do not press Delete. Just in case you have, or if you just followed me, here's how you get it back. If you press Second and Insert, and then you go to Second and L1, which is the number 1 key, and there you go, came back. Just saying, it just gets kind of tricky sometimes. So we're going to type in the midterm under L1 and the final exam under L2, and then we're going to compare these things. So, oops. There we go. 68, 78, 92, 90, 88, 82, 94, 83, 71, 62. Okay, scan back through that and make sure everything is typed in there correctly. And I believe it is. 62, 77, 99, 87, 85, 84, 95, 98, 72, and 64. Okay, so we have both of those things. And let me tell you what not to do, because here's our habit. You may want to turn the scatter plot on. Don't, because we don't need the scatter plot. We're not going to graph these things. What we're going to do instead is get some statistics from these things. So if you press Stat and go over to Calc, it's going to be one variable statistics. It's the top one. Now, the top thing, the X with the bar over it, that's the mean. So X bar for this first data set is 80.8. And how do I know it's the first data set? Because it always defaults to L1. We'll have to do something special to get L2 in a minute. So there's X bar. And then if you notice, this one right here is the SX standard deviation. This actually is also standard deviation. I hope you remember, but when we were talking about variance and maybe touched on standard deviation a little bit, this is when you have a sample, and this is when you know the entire thing. S for sample, and this funny looking Greek letter is for the entire population. This is the entire population. So we're going to use the Greek letter, sigma, lowercase sigma. It looks like a 6 that got knocked over. The standard deviation is 10.31. That should be enough decimal places. Okay, we need to figure that out for L2 as well. So if we press Stat and go over to Calc, and we'll hit one variable statistics again. There's a tendency for people to go to 2 variable statistics. Don't do that. But now we need to press Second and L2, so it'll calculate this for L2. And if you press Enter, there we go. X bar equals 82.3. And standard deviation, that sigma, mine always looks like a 6, equals 12.65. Okay, now at this point it's going to be very obvious. This mean is higher than that one, and that standard deviation is higher than that one, and that's going to help us pick our answer. Both of them are higher for final exam. There we go. I do believe that answer would be A.